Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Zoe Langley-Wathen, and we're going to be talking all about walking. Zoe has done walking in the Southwest and Wales coastal paths, Offa's Dykh and the Camino. So Zoe, you have done some incredible walks and you've got a real passion for getting outside, getting outdoors. Where did that all start for you?
Well, do you know, it's a really interesting thing because it's something that I've thought about often because I don't come from a family that was sporty. I don't come from a family where, you know, we were encouraged to go out and play sports or get out on our bikes regularly or anything like that. But I did come from a family where we didn't have a car. My dad worked for the railway, so we used public transport a lot. And the nearest railway station was a mile away from the house. So, you know, even when we went on holiday as a small child, you know, we would all be responsible for carrying our own gear and walking down to the station. And it seemed like a really big adventure, you know, as a 5-6-year-old. And then that stepped up. Because I lived out in a small village on the sort of periphery, I guess, of a small village next to fields. My brother and I, he's 5 years older than me, we used to go walking down the fields of a weekend and go exploring. And then, you know, I had friends that lived in the street as well. And we would go off exploring. And it was sort of back in the day, I guess, where parents were quite happy for you to do that. They would send you off out, you know, have a nice time, here's a sandwich and see you at 5 o'clock. And I used to spend hours just wandering, you know, up and down this little lane that we used to call the Jungalow, or wandering down to the pit, which was near the farm where I lived. And the pit was this pond. It was just a small pond, but it was, you know, surrounded by mystery and suspense. And I imagined all sorts of stories that, you know, surrounded this pit. You know, perhaps there were things or people that lived in it. So you know how a child's mind works. And then that stepped up even further. I joined a youth club in the village and we used to go on night hikes and day hikes as well. But the night hikes were dead exciting. They tended to be organised in such a way where you were on like an obstacle course. You know, you had to defuse a bomb with your team of 6, or you had to get your team of 6 over an electric fence that was 6 foot high and plus all your kit. And there were all sorts of things like that. So this kind of continued up till I was about 16. And in fact, the last memory I think I have of that period was my brother inviting me to join him on a trek to go and search my brother asked me to go and help him search for the source of the Yeo, the River Yeo, a very Somerset thing. And the River Yeo was about less than half a mile away from our house. So one Sunday morning, we took off and walked all the way out, actually to the mouth of the Yeo. I think I said the source of the Yeo. It was the mouth of the Yeo. And it was so exciting. And I remember that being really one of my first sort of family challenges that we embarked on together. And we reached the M5 motorway. And all of a sudden, the river just disappeared under the motorway. And Chris said to me, he said, right, your choice then, Zoe. It's either over the top or under. And I thought, oh, good God. And I looked at this river that just sort of channeled underneath the motorway. And the only way of getting alongside it was to sort of shimmy along this huge sewer pipe. And I looked at that and I looked at the water and thinking, gosh, that looks really deep. I'm not sure I like the look of this. But then I looked at the motorway and thought, well, 6 lanes of traffic. It was the 1980s, so maybe not as busy as it is now. But I didn't fancy risking going over the top. So I went under. And it scared me a little. But I loved that. It was really exciting.
Oh, Your childhood just sounds so idyllic and fun, and going on these night hikes and turning into like obstacle courses and getting over the electric fence and finding the mouth or the source of the river. I mean, just how amazing to grow up that way. I mean, I suppose at that time you didn't know any different, not having a car, so having to walk everywhere, it almost just became part of your life. When did you ever drift away from the outdoors? Did you ever sort of get to that place? I don't know if you went off to university or you got like a job, and then suddenly being outside all the time wasn't possible.
It's funny because I guess I didn't really do much in the way of hiking for a period. I guess sort of there's a period in my 20s. I did still walk. I had my daughter when I was 24. So I didn't go to university at that point. I went straight from school into a job, and I was married young. I got married about a couple of months before my 21st birthday. And I had my daughter when I was 24. And I guess I used to take Laura off out on walks. I think that passion that I had for walking and for being outside, my daughter became my excuse to be able to get out. And I remember purchasing my first child-friendly backpack, the sort that you pop your child in and then go off. That was fun. That was really good. But it still wasn't a real big hunky type hike that you could get your teeth stuck into, because I just felt I couldn't at that point. And it wasn't the sort of lifestyle that my husband was appreciating either. He was into sport. He was into cricket and football, and I guess I just used to tag along with that. But there were times where I'd definitely shy away from the cricket and the football, and I'd say, right, I'm taking Laura out today, and we're going to go and explore the New Forest. I should say at this point I'd moved down to Dorset by then. So I was exploring a new area and places that I'd never been before. So that was very exciting. Coming down to the coast, and it was kind of real coast. It wasn't the River Severn sort of estuary type coast. So yes, it was something that I did shy away from, but I knew that I always wanted to do something bigger, find something bigger. But I was too immature to really understand what that was at that point.
Well, when did that change for you? Because when did you have this dream to go and do like a long distance walking path?
Well, I think at about, I don't know how old I was. I think about 30 something, about 30. I moved down to a little village on the south coast called Lulworth, West Lulworth. That's about a mile away from Lulworth Cove, beautiful Durdle Door and, the Jurassic Coast. And I can remember saying at that point, I would love to walk the Southwest Coast path. And then in the very same breath, but I'll never be able to do it. I can actually remember saying that, I wouldn't be able to do that. And so I'd sown that seed, but I'd immediately stamped on it again, so it tried to grow, but it actually didn't have the opportunity to grow. I think it just stayed there. It just stayed dormant for quite some years. And I spent 4 years living in Lulworth, and then another 5 years living just a few miles north of Lulworth, so still within striking distance of the Southwest Coast Path and that beautiful area. And I spent a lot of time just going out on walks there and appreciating it, and still not really thinking, oh, I could go and do this.
Well, where do you think those fears came from?
I don't know that it was even fears, Sarah. I mean, mean, there's definitely a family thing there, perhaps, where although I've always been encouraged to do whatever I can do, there's also, quite an old-fashioned view of, oh, well, are you sure you can do that? My parents are quite elderly, and I guess there are some things that, they would say at that point, don't put yourself in a position where you might be disappointed. Maybe not dad, perhaps mum. So I think perhaps there was still an element of that entrenched in my psyche that, I can't do that because I might fail and I might disappoint myself. But then I know that intrinsically I'm not that sort of person. I'm really not like that. And I do love a challenge, and I do put myself out there and have a go at things. And I think also that the whole thing about the walk, the South West Coast Path, was that it was such a huge undertaking in my eye at that point. 630 miles. Gosh, it's like, that's weeks of walking. And, I hadn't done much more than a few hours of walking at a time, and maybe a couple of overnighters. So, yeah, I think it was possibly also the fear of, okay, how do I go away for this amount of time and leave my family, leave my responsibilities. And I think that's possibly something that a lot of people, and women in particular, face that. They have their responsibilities that they have to meet. I
mean, I actually love what you said earlier. Well, when you had your daughter, because so often you hear the excuses or the reasons, I can't do that because I've got a child or because I've got a daughter, whereas you'd actually flipped it and you were saying, because I have my daughter, I was using that as an excuse to go out, to get outside and to go on these walks and to, breathe in that incredible fresh air. So you had this dream about the Southwest Coastal Path. Tell everybody, because we do have listeners from all over the world. So just expand a little bit more about the Southwest Coastal Path and when you decided that actually you were going to make this dream a reality.
Well, the Southwest Coast Path, it starts in Minehead and finishes in Poole. It's 630 miles around the toe of the United Kingdom, and it encompasses so many different terrains, and it's you have the gentleness of Somerset, the rolling hills, and the ticks. Gosh, they have a lot of ticks. Sorry, I just had this memory that came back to me of being caught by numerous ticks over and over again on just within the 2 days that I was walking through Somerset. But it was beautiful, really beautiful. And then suddenly that changes into this ruggedness, this sharp, isolated, beautiful ruggedness of North Devon. And then that drops into North Cornwall. And then North Cornwall, you're then starting to get into sort of surfers' paradise and, quite touristy artists. And that's, art is one of my big loves. So for me, that was great, kind of walking through these tiny little villages that were just filled with paintings and artists and people who saw the world in the same way as me. And then you reach the very tip of the UK. You reach Land's End, and that's quite an emotional point for anybody that's walking the Southwest Coast Path. I feel anyway, and it's a turning point, literally, in that you turn and you suddenly start walking the other way. For weeks you've had the sun facing you. You're walking into it, and then all of a sudden, it's generally on your right hand side and at your back, and that's quite a strange feeling to suddenly have the sun in a different direction. It's quite disorientating. So then you move through South Cornwall, again very beautiful, and South Devon. South Devon, to me, I mean that is filled with memories of holidays for me, because when we caught the train from our little village in North Somerset, we normally went down to Torquay. So we would go down to the English Riviera. And so it's quite touristy down there. There's a lot of proms, there's a lot of Victorian bandstands. I suppose you could say for some quite a welcome flat area, but I love the hills. I really, really love the ups and downs. And yeah, and then you reach Dorset, and then Dorset, you part of Devon, and part of Dorset is then the Jurassic Coast, and that is the most beautiful stretch of the South West Coast Path.
It sounds so idyllic. So you've had, the South West Coastal Path. It's been in your mind for quite a while. When did you decide you were going to do it, and how long did you give yourself to sort of prepare and get yourself ready for the challenge?
Well, it was really quite a strange moment for me. In the village that I grew up in, I was brought up going to the church in that village. It was a small village, and this enormous church they used to call the Cathedral in the moors, because it was so big. And the vicar that used to be at that church whilst I was growing up, but then had long since left and moved on to bigger and better things. He'd gone off to Wells Cathedral, and he'd become the Archdeacon of Bath and Wells. I think he'd turned 60 or 65. It's, whenever you get the bus pass. And he had decided he was going to go and raise money to help assist the Wells Cathedral's girls' choir. So the boys' choir used to get the funding, the girls' choir didn't. So he decided he was going to go off in this bus pass pilgrimage. And I thought, what a great idea. This is, really inspired. I'd like to support him in this. And I hadn't seen him for a long time. And I'd hoped that if I popped into Wells on the way up to North Somerset to see my parents, that I might be able to see him, but I didn't. But my daughter and I, we popped into the cathedral office, went and paid our sponsorship to support him doing that. And then just took, an hour's walking around Wells. Very pretty little city. We had a wander around, and we wandered into Waterstones. And this would have been round about the August or September, I would say, of 2010. And at this point, I had, the ideas of doing the South West Coast Path had long since kind of been pushed to the back of my mind. And I had been trying to think for months and months about how I wanted to celebrate my 40th birthday, which would be the following year in 2011. And I knew I wanted to mark it in some way. I wanted to pass through that rite of passage almost of becoming 40 by doing something that meant something to me. And I'd gone through the whole, I could go and do Machu Picchu, I could do Kilimanjaro, I could do, all of these things, you hear and you read of people doing that have been really inspirational. But it didn't resonate with me. There was something that it just didn't touch me at that point. And I wanted, because it was my 40th birthday, I wanted it to touch me and to mean something. And so we just wandered into Waterstones, and it was like this divine moment. If you can imagine that point in the Blues Brothers film where this shaft of light, this heavenly light is hitting, the people in the church. It was just like that. This shaft of light shining on one book, on a bookcase. And there it was, the South West Coast Path handbook. And it was like, oh yeah, oh my gosh. And then all of a sudden, all of this passion came flooding back to me. And it was like, well, I grew up in Somerset near the start of the South West Coast Path. I spent, years holidaying down in Devon. In my teen years, I was a bell ringer with a friend of mine, and we used to go on these Devon weekends, and amazing Devon weekends where we used to go and ring in church towers and then go off to the pub afterwards. And there were all these links. I had ancestors who were tin miners, and now I was in Dorset, and I had lived within minutes of the South West Coast Path, and it was just like, okay, this is it. And I skipped to that hill just to pay for this book, knowing that there had been some divine intervention there, or perhaps it was just a really good case of extra good advertising. The branding had worked, and I'd just been sucked in. But I'm so glad I was, and I spent the next few months planning it. And I know I've heard you talk about accountability, Sarah, and I did this thing at school. I'm a teacher, and it was sometime in the September, October, it must have been the October, I decided that I would do an assembly to the school and announce that I was walking the South West Coast Path the following year. And in doing that, there was no backing out. I had to then go ahead and do it. I asked the head if I could take 2 weeks unpaid leave at the end of the school year, because I was a little bit concerned. It was 630 miles. I didn't know what my capabilities were, and I didn't want to run over. So I did take 2 weeks extra off in July. But yes, so that was my story of how I fell into doing the South West Coast Path.
That's really interesting. I think actually you said, your body, filled with passion, in that excitement, and it resonated with you. Seeing that book, it really connected. And that's the feeling that I suppose I want other people to feel when they come across their own personal challenge, whatever it may be. I love the fact you thought, should I go climb Kilimanjaro? Should I go and do the Inca Trail? And actually it was the South West Coastal Path in England, where you've grown up, something actually that you have been thinking about for such a long time. I mean, the accountability piece is so key. Standing up in front of the whole school and telling them, this is what I'm going to be doing. Yeah. I mean, I can imagine with children, Miss, how's your training going? Are you ready for the path? I mean, also an incredible momentous way to celebrate or to bring in your 40th birthday. So for me, it all feels as though it's coming together and it's the right thing to do. It's the right time. How did your planning go and your preparation? Because like you said, you'd never done anything like this before. It's 630 miles. Were you going to be wild camping or staying in youth hostels? How did you plan that aspect of it?
Well, I'd planned to camp. I knew I had to get kit. I had to get quite a lot of kit. I didn't really have the right sort of stuff, to take with me. So I'd left myself, I guess, about 7 months to get that sorted. I contacted the South West Coast Path Association just to get some information from them. Were there women that walked it on their own even? That was another big issue for me. It's like, okay, well, I want to do this on my own, but, is it something that's done even? And I know that's a strange thing to query, but, I had so many people say to me, what, you're doing it on your own? You sure that's wise? And it's like, well, why not? And so that's why, I went to them and I said, is this something that women do on their own? Yes, it's fine, they've said. So in terms of planning, my daughter by this point was 15, and she was going to be turning 16 in the April, and I was going to be going off in the July, and she was very mature for her age in many ways. I felt comfortable about leaving her. She was left on her own for 9 days, which I think she found actually hugely liberating. And, she's kind of said to me since that she learned such a lot in that period. And I taught her how to cook. She was able to fend for herself. But then, she had somebody with her for the time after that. So, yes, I had Laura to think of in my planning. I had my mileage to think of in the planning. How many miles was I going to walk a day? Even could I manage per day? And so I started going on training walks. And in particular, the hills around here, they're not mountains by any means. You go up to Wales or Scotland or the Lake District for the mountains. But, these hills, some of them that you cope with on the South West Coast Path they're short, sharp shockers. They're knee breakers. And, people very often will underestimate that, and especially if you're carrying, weight on your back. That when I did actually get started, that was my first lesson. If you've got 15 kilos on your back, 18 kilos even, I think I started with 18 kilos, it's going to break your knees. You're going to hurt. And I did. I learned very quickly what things I needed and what things I didn't. And if I think about the kit that I have now, I mean, I really should sort it at some point and just sell it on. I laugh about it. I bought a duo egg holder. It was this little yellow plastic egg holder to carry 2 eggs with me on my backpacking trip around the Southwest Coast Path. Well, yeah, that got sent back very quickly. I had a frying pan so I could fry these lovely little eggs. And I think I had some kind of idyllic view that I was going to be, walking past little country cottages, little farmhouses, and I was going to go and knock on the door and say, "Can I buy an egg from you, please?" It really didn't happen. And I had kit, things like something that turned my thermarest into a chair. And, I thought, okay, do I really need this? Is this something that if I didn't have this, I wouldn't be able to survive the walk? And no, clearly I didn't. So this 68 litre Osprey pack that I bought was soon pared down. It was 68 litres and about 18 kilos, and my shoulders absolutely killed in the first 2 weeks. I sent stuff back. I soon got it down to sort of half the weight that it should be. Many people have a dream or this goal that they want to accomplish. And I'm just wondering, did you find it much of a shock, in terms of your expectations, this big dream that you'd have, to suddenly the actual reality of doing it and getting out there, dealing with these, short, sharp climb? No, what did you call them? Short, sharp shockers. Yeah. So dealing with these short, sharp shockers of climb, these knee breakers. What was the difference between your expectation and reality while you were out there? I don't think there was a huge amount of difference, other than the fact that I found I was less fearful of being on my own. In fact, I absolutely drunk it in, because I was able to absorb my surroundings. I was able to say hello to people. I was able to just experience that beauty of being able to walk and think and plan. Being able to, I was planning to begin with. I was planning lessons, for 6 weeks' time. What am I going to do when I go back in September? Oh, I know, I'll do this, and this. And it's funny, I don't do that when I'm walking now. I've stopped that, and I think my thoughts have changed. So I think I was trying to get to grips with keeping in contact with the people who were following me. And this was 2011, so I didn't have a smartphone. It wasn't something I'd thought about at that point. I had to kind of try and find places to go to and borrow people's computers and kind of type things in. So, and the wild camping, I had planned to camp it all the way around, but if there were places where I had opportunities to stay, or I was invited to stay, I would use those. And for me, I think that was the big game changer. The acceptance of staying at people's houses actually changed the whole. It changed the way I felt about the walk, and it's something that actually stayed with me until the very next trail that I did, where I decided, okay, I need to wild camp the whole thing. So what happened was I contacted somebody. It was an old school friend of mine. Her parents had moved down to Cornwall, and I contacted them to say, would it be possible if I could just stay just for one night? I'm going to be passing through there roughly about this time. And they said, oh, it would be lovely to see you. Come on in, Zoe. So I stayed the night, and we had such a good catch up. I hadn't seen them for years and years. And they were both retired. And the following morning, when I went to say goodbye, they said, we've been talking and we would like to invite you to stay for the period that you're walking from where we are in Cornwall all the way around to Foy. And I said, oh, thank you. I kind of took their invitation up with open arms, and I said, thank you so much. That would be wonderful. And they said, we'll come and pick you up when you finished in the evening, and then we'll drop you back off again in the morning. We will fed you. You can have a shower, somewhere to sleep. You don't have to take all of your gear with you. Leave your tent and everything here. Just take what you need. And I thought, what a wonderful, wonderful gift. And they said, this is our gift to you. We don't mind doing this. This is kind of like our way of sponsoring you. And as wonderful as it was, and I still, hugely appreciate that time that they gave to me, I actually realised how much I missed. I missed wild camping at Land's End and at Sennan Cove. I missed the sunrises and the sunsets. And I had that added pressure in the back of my mind all the time. Okay, what time is it? I need to be back. I need to get to the next point at such and such a time because I'm going to be picked up at this time. And it just changes the dynamics of your walk. So I was so grateful to them for giving me that opportunity and for taking the pressure off my back and she massaged my feet every night, bless her. That was absolutely beautiful. But I just needed to take back that opportunity for me to be out there on my own and wild camp. And actually up until that point I had never wild camped on my own before. And so I said my goodbyes there, and I got to a point, and I actually cannot remember the name of this point now. It might come back to me in a while. But there's a marker on a headland, and it's the most unusual marker. It's painted red and white stripes. And I knew that on this particular night, this was going to be the time that I first wild camped on my own. And I remember my tummy churning, thinking, okay, this is going to be a toughie, but come on, Wath, you can do this. And I can actually remember setting up my tent next to a stile. It was between a stile and a gate. Why I did that, I have no idea. I guess I just thought that I was going to be safer there or something. It was at the Gribbin. It's come back to me now. It was a place called the Gribbin. And I guess because I was setting up my tent as it was getting dark, I wasn't quite sure how much further on I needed to go till I found somewhere that was suitable. And I wasn't even experienced, actually, in knowing what was suitable. What sort of pitch was I looking for, so anyway, I pitched there and everything was fine. I got everything set up and got into my sleeping bag, and I woke up at about 2:30 in the morning, and I thought, oh God, I need a wee. And it's like, oh, maybe I could just hold it. I'll be all right until about 5-6 o'clock. I'll be fine. And then it's like, no, come on, Wath. You've got to get out. You need a wee. Yes, it's going to be dark out there, but, you need a wee. And you kind of go through this coaching yourself into getting out of the tent. And I unzipped my tent, and I just remember gasping. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced that, Sarah, that sheer beauty of so many millions of stars that just light the sky with no light pollution anywhere. They are just there in their thousands. It's just incredible. And in that moment, I forgot that I even needed a wee. I just sat there thinking, this is incredible, and I want more of this. And that's when I realised I've missed it all around Land's End and all kind of the north side of Cornwall. And I thought, okay, I need more of this. So it was the most awesome experience ever.
What was it like finishing? Was there obviously happiness for finishing, but a tinge of sadness that it was over?
Yes, there was a bit of both. There was, I'd met quite a few people en route, and I don't think I would ever meet a group of people like that in those sorts of circumstances again. I've been on lots of walks since, and we've met some wonderful people, and we've stayed in touch. But this particular group of people, it just worked really well, and we decided, we kept bumping into one another, on and off throughout the walk. And it's like, you think they've gone. You think, oh yeah, they walk faster than me. I'm not going to see them again for dust. Bye. And then 2 days later, it's like, oh, hi, how are you doing? I thought you were long gone. And you realise they've taken like half a day off, or, they'd stopped to see somebody. So anyway, that's kind of the way it worked. And we decided that for the last 2 weeks, we would try and walk together and aim to finish on the same day, so that we had that opportunity to celebrate something together. Now, and because I was doing it as a charity walk, and I'd involved the school very much in all of this, I'd invited a couple of the charities that I was raising money for to come and join us on the last stage of the walk between Swanage and Poole. So that's about 7 miles. And some of the students from school came and they walked with us as well. And then we got along to close to South Haven Point, where there's a nudist beach, and even more people joined us, and it was just like this huge posse, this wonderful group of people that had come to wish us well and to say congratulations. And so that was a real high point. I felt so elated with achievement, and the fact that there were all of these people there to say, well done, you've actually done something that is perhaps beyond what most of us think we can do, and it was beyond what I felt I could do. And then, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, what was the impact on the rest of your life after completing this challenge? I mean, did it change your perceptions of you and what you could do, and what you could do in the future? Because sorry I interrupted you, but like you said, you felt as though it was beyond you, but it wasn't. You've just walked this 630 miles. You've completed this dream, the Southwest Coastal Path. I mean, how long did it take you in the end?
Well, it took me 47 days, but I had to take I took a couple of days out there. In fact, I took 5 days out because my nan passed away 3 days into the walk. So I got to Tintagel, and it was blowing a hoolie down there. It was windy and rainy, gusting sort of 30 to 40 mile an hour winds. And I just thought, this funeral is going to be happening, and I really want to be there. I don't know how the hell I'm going to get back for it, but I need to get back so I can go. And so, I did take time out there to leave. That was 10 hours to get back to Poole from Tintagel. But going back to the original question of how I felt, the first part was the elation. The second part was there is a real drop, and I felt a real grief of leaving the trail behind me. And that was quite hard, of coming back to home life again, and home life I love, but it was just not being outside in this beautiful environment. I've forgotten what the second part of the question was. Yeah,
just in terms of what was the impact on the rest of your life from completing this challenge?
Oh, that's right, yes.
In terms of whether it was changing your perception of you and what you could achieve and what you wanted to do?
Yes, so it's the immediate first way it changed my life was all of a sudden my wardrobe had to change. I had dropped down 2 dress sizes. I'd gone from a size 12 to 14 down to a size 8 in 7 weeks. And that was a real shock. So that was my first thing. It's okay, right, change that side of things. And that also was involved in my grieving of the path, because all of these clothes that are part of me, who I am and my identity, just had to be shelved, and I've never worn them since. That completely has never gone back again.
Wait, sorry, the size 8 clothes or the size 12 or 14 clothes?
The size 12, 14 clothes have never come back. I've stayed. I fluctuate between an 8 and a 10 now, depending on whether I've been walking or not. But in terms of my own belief in myself, that was immense. The what that gave to me, it was like absolute, total, yes, you can do this, Zoe. You have just achieved this. You have just walked 630 miles. You said you couldn't do it. You've put this on hold for 15 years or more because you thought you could never do it. Why did I waste that time? Why didn't I just get on and do it before? And so what actually started off as being a once in a lifetime walk. And that's all it was going to be. It was just a walk that was going to mark my 40th birthday. And then there you go, tick, done that. Now let's get on with middle age. All of a sudden, people were saying to me, okay, so what's next? It's like, oh, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, I could do something else. I can do this, definitely. And thinking, gosh, really? Can I? Yeah, I can do it. I can definitely do it. And then all of a sudden I started looking, actually searching for the next challenge. It filtered into my life at school. I felt more confident, more able to talk to people about what I had been doing. I felt there was a trust there with the students. They listened. They wanted to listen to what I had to say, and they trusted that what I was saying was something that they could take with them and be inspired by. And I've had conversations with students since I've left. Sorry, not since I've left. Since they've left. I bumped into a student in a pub completely randomly. She was serving behind a bar, and I looked at her and I recognized her, and I couldn't remember where from, and she told me who she was, and she said, I'll never forget that assembly you gave us after you'd finished your first walk. And she said, I've gone off and I've done part of that walk now. I think she'd done 5 days or something, went and camped with her friends, and she's in her 20s now. But and I thought, wow, that means so much to me that it not only gave me the confidence to know that I could go off and do something else like this, but it's given others the confidence. And for me, I work in a girls' school. That's even more important, because I hear so much, I can't do that, or I'm frightened of failure. They're very risk averse. They're bright students and they're very risk averse. This kind of whole building up resilience is a really important area for me to work on for myself, but to try and encourage these young women, these young females, that they can do it.
Oh, I have to say, isn't that just amazing though? You've done that, you're obviously doing the challenge for yourself, but sharing it with the girls, and for it to have such an impact that even years later she's telling you, I'll never forget that assembly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's almost like, that is what it's all about, is, the fact is you have gone out, done this incredible challenge, it's inspired other people around you. What was next? What did you do afterwards? What did you decide to do?
Well, the following year, the people that I'd met on the walk, we decided to rock up to Cardiff in May the following year and go and see another friend of ours, Arry, who I think you've actually had on the podcast.
Arry Berresford-Webb, or Arry Cain,
yes,
as she is now.
Arry Cain now, yes, yeah. We decided to go and see her in to Cardiff, because she ran all the way around Wales, and we wanted to be there to cheer her in for the last mile. And that was a very special moment. I was so pleased to be there for that, and to celebrate her achievement, her amazing achievement, and to be there for the opening of the Wales Coast Path. So Arry came in and she handed the baton to another chap, Dave, and he went off and took off and walked all the way around Wales. And I remember looking at him thinking, you haven't done this before. And I'm thinking, you're exactly where I was this time last year. He had the biggest bag on his back, and I thought, yeah, you're not going to last 5 minutes with that. It'll be a couple of weeks maybe, and you'll be shedding things out of there. And actually, I remember talking to him after, or reading somewhere, perhaps in a blog of his after, that I think it was hours hours after leaving, he I think he sat in a bus stop and decided he was going to shed this stuff out. So anyway, we sat in a pub and we celebrated with Arry, and then we got chatting, and it was like, we could do this. Wells Coast Path. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was quite peeved because the lads that I was with, they said, yeah, we'll go all the way around. We'll do what Arry did. We'll walk all the way around Wales. So it's Offa's Dykh and Wells Coast Path. And I was like, I can't do that. It's like 1,047 miles. I am not going to be able to squeeze that into my 6-week holiday. There's just no way I could have done it. And so I ended up meeting them. They did 9 days on Offa's Dykh, and I met them at Chepstow at the end of July, 21st of July, I think it was, in 2012, and carried on with them to Chester. And that was an amazing walk. It was 870 miles. It was further than the Southwest Coast Path, but it was not as hilly. There are some challenges in there. There's definitely some hilly bits in there, but certainly the Southwest Coast Path was still the knee breaker.
Was it different doing it with your friends this time instead of doing it by yourself?
It was, but I'm a very social person. Although I love my own company, and I've always told people since I've been walking like this, I've always told people I never feel alone when I'm walking alone, because I'm either appreciating the beauty of the area around me, or I'm thinking, or I meet people and I say hello, and I carry that with me until I meet the next person. But walking with these people was actually, it's almost like therapy, I guess, because when you sit in front of somebody, across a table, and you talk to somebody, the dynamics of that is completely different to when you walk side by side with somebody. There's no eye contact, or if there is, it's not a lot. There's the whole thing about what goes on tour stays on tour. You chat to people, you open up unknowingly, really. So you don't plan to open up, but you tend to talk about your life and your relationships and your past, and what you do for a living and what you enjoy, what you hate, all of these sorts of things. And before you know it, within 2 days, somebody's had your life history. And there's something quite therapeutic about that. And that, the chances are you're never going to see them again. Although in this case, that wasn't what happened. But, I'd already built up this friendship with Steve and Mike, and I knew I could trust them. And we just walked and talked. We also had this understanding that Steve had long legs, and he was like Crazy Legs Crane. He could just walk and walk and walk miles and miles and miles, a lot faster than we could. So that was fine. And he'd just meet us, whenever we got there. And with Mike and I, we would walk and talk. And then I tend to walk faster than Mike. And it was just a case of an unspoken rule, really, that, if you've had enough, you carry on, you just keep walking. You don't actually need to say anything. You don't need to say, I'm going to walk on now because I've had enough of walking with you. It's just this fluid thing that happens. And so you just carry on walking, and then you get to the next village, or the next pub, or the next kiosk, or the next viewpoint, the next top of a hill, whatever it is that seems a natural place to stop, and you stop and you wait. And it just happens like that in a very kind of friendly kind of way. It's not anything that anybody needs to feel that they have to explain.
Yeah. So what would be the ultimate walk that you'd like to go on and do? Do you have a walk, or? Oh, I'm sure you have many.
I've got a list that is as long as my arm. All of the walks that I would love to do. I mean, I've just last year or this year discovered the Great Trail in Canada, thinking, oh wow, that would be wonderful. 21,000 kilometers, I think it is, 15,000 miles, and that would be immense. I would love to do that. I don't think that's going to happen for a while yet. There's a few other commitments that need to be taken care of first. But no, in my
so say you heard it here first.
Yes, yeah, that is the one I would love to do. But no, I mean, certainly the Triple Crown, the American Triple Crown, the AT, the PCT, and the CT, I would love to do that. And I mean, even just doing the appellation, I've absolutely absorbed watching your vlog and just gone, oh my gosh, I would love to be there. I would love to be there. And it's like, and I've kind of felt I've walked it every step of the way with you. So I've really, that's been wonderful.
You've ticked that one off the list. You can move straight on to PCT now.
Don't need to do that one now. I guess the next mini one for me will probably be the Ridgeway, which is just a short dab that's about 87 miles, and I'm hoping to do that in the spring next year, and I'm planning to do that solo. I'm very keen to keep my identity and to keep my ability and my confidence to walk on my own as a female. I'm remarried now, and so even though I enjoy walking with my husband, we both know that we like to do things on our own too. So he went off cycling from Wales to Spain 2 years ago, and took 3 weeks to do that, and that was absolutely fine. That was great. And so I get to do mine as well. I would like to walk around Dorset, and actually I had planned to walk around Dorset back in 2014, but I went through quite a hurting split. That's probably not the right word. It was a relationship split. It was a long-term relationship, and it was a split of shocking prematurity that completely took me by surprise. And so the planning for the Round Dorset Walk just, had to be put on hold, and it couldn't happen. Whoops, my cat's just tried to mount the laptop. Come on. So that's still on the cards. That's still one that I would love to do. And there is actually a trail book called the Around Dorset Walk. Actually, I think it's Round Dorset Walk. But I'm not particularly happy with the places that it takes in, because it doesn't actually take in all of the areas that are right on the boundary, like Lyme Regis, for example. It cuts off Lyme Regis. So there's a tradition in Poole called Beating the Bounds, where they do this mock-up of where, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, when they didn't write things down, they still had to make sure that the children of the groups in the area and the families knew where the boundaries were. So it was awful, really awful. They would take them out to the boundary line and beat them so that they remembered where this line was. Now, obviously, I don't approve of that, but there is still this tradition that they still take. They still go out with a drum and they beat around the bounds of the parish or of the town or of the county. And I just had this kind of vision of finding or marking the Dorset boundary myself, and walking it. It's quite an undertaking. I started the planning for it, and by the time I discovered that the boundary line goes along these really busy roads and through the middle of the River Avon, I think was one of them, and through plantations. And I was thinking, how on earth am I going to navigate this? But, my love for maps, I studied these OS maps over and over, thinking, okay, I've got to find a way through here. This can be done. So, yeah, that's a little one that will be in the offing at some point. And I say a little one because it's about 180 miles. So again, it's not a huge one.
I like the fact that you'll want to continue to do stuff solo to keep up your own confidence and belief in your abilities. I think that's that is so important. In terms of advice or tips for other women out there who, there's almost two aspects to this. There's one who may have been putting off a dream, like you said, why did you wait 15 years to do this walk? And then, so something, any advice around that? And then the second one would be just in general about getting outdoors, going walking. What advice would you have for women who want to do that?
Well, I think in terms of about not waiting is what's holding you back. I mean, for me, I guess at the time it was my family. So, Laura was young. I sensibly couldn't go off for 6 weeks with her, leaving her at home, sort of under 16. I didn't feel I could do that. However, in hindsight now, I don't think there would be anyone that's done a walk with their teenage daughter or son that would regret that afterwards. I think I could have taken Laura with me, and I think she would have been empowered by that as well. And I almost wish I'd done that when she was much younger, given her that opportunity to come with me. Okay, you have to adapt things. You can't expect them to walk 25 miles a day. And you certainly probably wouldn't feel able to carry a youngster on your back for 25 miles a day. But there are ways of adapting your own lifestyle and your own situation into something that you want to achieve, something that you want to do. And I guess that's what I was doing all the way through my 20s and 30s. I was preparing myself mentally for this without even realizing I was doing that. And still going out. I was still going out walking. I was still hiking. And Laura, actually, she had her first pair of walking boots at 5 or 6 years old. And I can remember having this constant mini supply of walking boots that she had outgrown, that I was then having to sell on eBay or a car boot sale or whatever, because you paid good money for them. So all these little mini scarpers were building up, and I'd keep the boxes and clean them down and pop them back in the box and sell them, ready for the next pair. So yeah, encourage the youngsters to get out as much as you can, because there is that period where they will shy away from it, like I did almost, I guess. You just don't do it for a while, but then you come back to it. It's something that if you've been fed it when you're young, you return to it later on. And it's not something that they will tell you that you've done wrong. You always think that the teenagers are going to moan at you, or the children are going to moan at you for, oh, why are you taking me here? I don't want to do this. But actually that's all part and parcel of them growing up. They need to have a grumble and a complain, and let them experience it in their own way. So yeah, I think that was my preparation really for the big one. I am just sorry that I didn't do it sooner. In terms, the second part of that question was, I can't remember.
Advice and tips for other women who want to get out and do some walking and get outside.
That's right. It is as simple as just do it. I have had so many people say to me, oh gosh, I couldn't even walk a mile, let alone 25, or let alone 630, or let alone 870. And I've just said to them, all you're doing is walking. You're not running a marathon. You're not training for a marathon. You can actually walk yourself fit. And in fact, the Southwest Coast Path, I did have to do that. Although I had done some training walks, I actually got really sick just before my 40th birthday. In fact, it was in the April. I was 40 in the May, and in the April, I got this chesty cough thing, and it lasted for 12 weeks. And I'd been to the hospital. I'd had x-rays and all sorts of inhalers and tablets, you name it, I'd had it. And I didn't think I was going to be able to go at one point. And in the end, I just said, no, I've been planning this now for 7 or 8 months. I am going, whatever. I didn't feel fit. I didn't feel walk fit, but I started off slow. Okay, I was carrying a lot of weight on my back, and that obviously I soon had to sort out. But, I maybe walked 8 or 9 miles the first day. Next day, 10 or 11 miles, gradually building it up. doing what I felt I was capable of doing. And before I knew it, I was walking 22 miles with ease and not actually thinking about it. That's something that happens over a period of weeks. So if it's something that people are wanting to do on a whim, on a daily basis, or on a weekend, let's go out. I fancy going out for a walk. Just go and do it. And don't worry about going out on your own, even if it's just for a day walk. I see plenty of females out there walking on their own. And I'm pretty certain that there's so many people out there that think, in fact, I know there are people out there that think this because they've said it to me. I don't like walking on my own if I haven't got my dog or if I am not with somebody, because I feel like people will look at me. I don't know what this thing is about females feeling like somebody's going to think ill of them because they're walking on their own. What you're doing is you're going out to connect with your surroundings, to think, to be mindful, to get some vitamin D, to get some exercise. There's absolutely nothing wrong in that. And I would absolutely advocate, whether it's a walk around the local park, start with a walk around the local park, or whether it's a 10-mile jaunt, day jaunt across the coast or across the fields. Just do it. There's nothing, absolutely nothing that you should be feeling ashamed about or frightened of because you're walking on your own. It's a natural thing to do.
Absolutely. So you are on Twitter. What is your Twitter handle?
Do you know, my mind went a blank then. It's at Wathwalk.
Wathwalk, absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about how you got into walking and just sharing more about your love and passion for it and explaining more about the Southwest Coastal Path. It's been absolutely inspirational to have you on the Tough Girl podcast.
It's been an absolute pleasure and so exciting to talk to you as well, Sarah. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Hey tribe, I hope you're well. Thank you so much for listening to that episode. I hope you enjoyed it and it's given you some thoughts and ideas about a future walk that you could go and do on. One of the things that I particularly liked is I sometimes feel with challenges and adventures that people think they've got to be epic and extraordinary and you've got to travel far away to go and have an adventure, whereas actually you can look on your own doorstep and look around you and see what ignites your passion and your interest and what gives you that spark, basically. So I also think Zoe's an incredible storyteller. I can just really imagine her going on this journey and what she was going through and finding out more about herself. So I have actually interviewed a lot of other women who've been walking, and if you're interested in walking especially, then I've got some recommendations for you. Go and take a listen to Kat Davis on the Tough Girl podcast. She is from the blog Following the Arrow. There is so much information on there. It's really well worth looking into, whether it's Hadrian's Wall you want to look at, the PCT, Hadrian's Walls. There's lots of UK walks, lots of international walks. We also talk on the podcast about her pilgrimage in Japan, which I'm completely going to forget the name of now, but really, really interesting. Obviously, you can listen to my episode about through hiking the Appalachian Trail, where my sister Caroline Wellingham interviews me. I've also spoken with Jessica Mills. Her trail name is Dixie, and Dixie through hiked the Appalachian Trail as well. She did it, I was doing mine in 100 days. Dixie took about, I think, 5.5, 6 months, and also vlogged her challenge as well. But lots of information about getting out there, going and doing a hike like this. My 100th episode of the Tough Girl podcast was with Cheryl Strayed, who wrote the book Wild, an incredible woman, incredible author. And when she was dealing with the loss of her mum and going through this period of grief, she headed out to the PCT. And we talked with Cheryl, not necessarily from what she took and the planning and the preparation, but more around the mental attitude, the mental side of things, what she learned from going on that journey, which was really about finding herself again. She went through this period where her life was completely out of sync and the decisions that she was making weren't fitting with her principles of how she wanted to live her life. So definitely go and take a listen to Cheryl Strayed. That's a phenomenal episode. Now, one of the other things that Zoe talked about was wild camping and wild sleeping, or cowboy camping, or whatever you want to call it. And we've spoken with another expert called Phoebe Smith, who is into extreme sleeping, and she gives lots of practical advice if you are going to be going wild camping, camping outdoors by yourself, being a solo. Please do go take a listen to Phoebe Smith. Beck's band we have interviewed from The Ordinary Adventurer. She also loves she is also from Love Her Wild, which is well worth checking out. It's a great resource for women who want to get outdoors, get an adventure. They run lots of trips. Do go check out the website loveherwild.com. Bex did a 1,000-kilometer walk across Israel and talks more about how she got into adventuring, and again, very, very inspiring, lots of practical advice. And most recently we spoke with Alex Mason, who is Beck's band's co-founder of Love Her Wild. So Alex and Bex both started Love Her Wild together, and Alex has been on an incredible journey. She headed off to through hike the PCT from Mexico all the way up to Canada, came back to the UK, started a job again, and was like, actually, this isn't what she wanted to do. Ended up going back to the PCT to through hike it the other way. So she walked from Canada, well, top of America, all the way down to Mexico, to Mexico, and then ended up flying over to New Zealand to do the Te Araroa Trail, which, we're going to take a listen to Anna McNuff because she's run the Te Araroa Trail. And then Alex headed over to Sydney, where she then cycled from Sydney all the way to Melbourne, and then all the way up the centre of Australia. So there's lots of incredible stories about women doing long distance hiking trails. So if there's something that you're interested in, there's lots of resources. So those names again for you are Kat Davis, Jessica Mills, Cheryl Strayed, Phoebe Smith, Beck's band, Alex Mason, and myself. Also, don't forget to go and take a listen to, if you haven't already, Arry Berresford-Webb, who's now Arry Cain. Arry was the first person to run around Wales when the new coastal path was built, and that's who Zoe was talking about. Zoe and Arry are really good friends, and I actually ended up meeting them both at the Women in Adventure Expo when it first came out. So that must have been like 2 years ago. So it's quite weird, like all these different connections which are coming out. But thank you so much for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. All the show notes can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com. You can find all of the links to the episodes that I have talked about. You can also find more information about myself, the different books that I've written. I also do want to end the episode with just saying a big thank you to my patrons. It's quite difficult because I'm very conscious that there are so many of you who listen to me every single week, and I'm sure every week you hear the same chat or the same spiel of me talking about my patrons and thanking them, and how you can become a patron by going to patreon.com. And you've probably sort of switched off by now, but I am very conscious that we do have a lot of new listeners who are hopefully finding the podcast, who hopefully listen to one episode and think, ooh, that was interesting. I've learned a lot from that. I feel motivated. I feel inspired. Let me go back and take a listen to the other episodes that I've put out. And I think if you start listening again, you'll probably realize that actually I don't really start talking about Patreon until maybe it was like June or July in 2016, but the podcast has been going for such a long time now. For those of you who don't know, it started back on the 4th of August in 2015 with 4 episodes, and I've been putting out a new episode every single week since then. And it is just growing and growing and growing and building and building and building. I'm trying to reach 500,000 downloads by the end of this year. To be honest, I'm not sure it's going to happen. I'm at 415,000 downloads. And I was actually getting like a little bit disappointed almost. I was thinking, why isn't this happening? Why aren't more people finding the Tough Girl podcast? And then I just thought, you know what? I just need to be relaxed and calm about it, because actually to stand in front of 415,000 people, and obviously I know that there will be repeat listeners, so it's probably like half that, like 200,000 people have listened. That's an insane amount of women and men to have connected with. And it's an incredible thought that all of these stories are now being shared, and people are hearing about these women who are going out there and doing these phenomenal challenges, who don't get the publicity that they deserve, which is what Tough Girl podcast is all about. It's about increasing the amount of female role models. It's about sharing the stories of women like Zoe who are, they're coming up to their 40th birthday. They want to do a big celebration. They go out and do an incredible challenge, which is so close to their own heart. And they've done something which they never thought was possible, and how it's changed their life and given them, new goals and new outlets. And I think it's just really, really inspiring. And we don't get to hear about women generally who do these challenges. So if you want to get involved and you want to help and support, then you can help and support me financially every single month by becoming a patron. I'm asking for $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever it is that you can afford. Because like everything in this world, unfortunately, nothing is free. Everything does come at a cost, whether it's the website hosting cost, the hosting fees for the podcast, my time to edit the podcast, to interview these incredible women, to write the show notes, to put it all up on social media, and to engage with you out there. So I do just want to thank everybody who has become a patron so far. There's about 130 women who are backing the Tough Girl podcast and Tough Girl challenges, which is absolutely amazing. I'd love to reach 150 by the end of the year. So if you've been listening to the Tough Girl podcast for a while now and you're getting some value from it and it's helping or it's improving your life in some way, then please do think about giving back, investing, helping me to expand and grow it, to reach more women out there, to help them achieve their own challenges and goals. So thank you again for all your incredible support. Go out there and get after what you want to do. Don't let family, don't let friends stop you from following your passions and your dreams. If you want to go something, if you want to do something, if you want to go somewhere, then please just take that first step today. That's what I'd love for you to do. Take that first step towards achieving that dream and that goal. Have an awesome Tuesday, or whatever day it is that you're listening to Tough Girl Podcast. But I will be with you next Tuesday for another episode. New episodes come out every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. All right, take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.